Hey everyone, my name is Ben Chaish, and today we're going to be looking at the two most popular rangefinder-esque digital cameras on the market today, and that is the Leica M10 and comparing it to the Fujifilm X-Pro3. I want to give a quick shout out to Tyler Trudeau, who is letting me borrow his X-Pro3 for this video. You can see him in some of his work in the description down below, as well as the comparison we did between the X-Pro3 and the XE4. So check out his work, good dude, and thankful that I have this camera to check out. Now, I actually recorded an entire other video kind of breaking down my thoughts and kind of just going back and forth and kind of doing my typical video of like just sitting across from you at a coffee shop and just kind of waxing poetic about the camera and its features and what matters and what doesn't and everything. But I realized that I was sort of just rambling too much in that video. It wasn't as coherent as I wanted. And so this time I'm just gonna go through a bunch of different feature sets and kind of give a point to each one or the other. That way we can hit things that actually matter and then kind of move between each and see which one wins each category. And before we do that, I want to introduce today's sponsor, which is Cascade Presets. Yes, they are my own presets, and this video isn't really sponsored by anybody. But if you're interested in some amazing presets that do well for street photography, for wedding photography, for portrait photography, for outdoors, the link to those is in the description down below, and it would help out the channel quite a bit, and me personally, if you went and just gave them a look. So the first thing, and kind of the reason why I think a lot of people want to think about using these cameras, is the styling. I will say both of them are actually styled way more similar than I even kind of realized at the time. They just look so similar, you know? Like if anybody that knows anything about cameras was walking down the street and just saw you wearing one of these, I don't think the vast majority of people would have any clue the difference between the two. They both have offset viewfinders. They both have, you know, little knobs on the top to change your shutter speed and your settings. They both generally just feel like the same camera. I've noticed that the Leica seems to be obviously designed and modeled after their original M2 and M3 cameras from the late 50s, early 60s. Then it feels like the Fujifilm kind of harkens back to the more 90s design of maybe the Contax G series, or even their heritage of making their version of the Hasselblad X-Pan. I believe it was the Fujifilm TX1. So there's definitely a slight difference in the range of age between the styling, but they're both definitely made to be more of a film-esque looking design. So in general, I would say you kind of can't go wrong either way, but I'm going to give the points to the Leica for being just a little bit more classic in its design in the styling. Now, the second category that I have made for this test is going to be sensor. Now, you're not going to be able to see the sensor because the shutter's in the way of the Leica, but the Leica has a full frame mid-20s, I think it's a 24 megapixel sensor, while the Fujifilm has a APS-C or a crop sensor, which is about a 1.5x. So the sensor is a lot smaller on the X-Pro3, but the sensor is still great, and it's definitely in the middle of the 20s, so it's a great size in those terms. But because the Leica has a full frame sensor over the crop, personally, I'm going to give that to the Leica for round number 2. Round number 3, we're going to move straight over to lenses. The Fujifilm has a ton of lenses, including some multiple for third parties. The Leica has its own set of lenses as well, and they are just some of the best lenses in the game by far. And they also accept lenses from third parties like Zeiss and Voigtlander and the Chinese manufacturers of TT Artisans and 7 Artisans. There are plenty for both systems, but again, I mean, I'm a Leica fanboy, and the Leica lenses are the best by far that I've ever used. So we're going to give the lens category as well to Leica. Now, one of the things that's most interesting about these cameras are their viewfinders. And so in the category of electronic viewfinder, since the X-Pro3 is the only one that has electronic viewfinder, it wins this category running away. The electronic viewfinder in the X-Pro3 is actually really good. I have no issues with it. It's big. Even with glasses, I can see the entire thing. It also makes it so that you can use any focal length on it and you will see what is coming through the viewfinder at full size. So I don't have to just cram my eye up and kind of move my eye through the viewfinder to shoot something like a 28mm, you know? So easily, since it's the only one that has it, the Fujifilm definitely wins in the electronic viewfinder category. From an optical viewfinder standpoint, though, I do believe the Leica wins in that category. It's just a lot bigger, like significantly bigger, but the minimal design and the larger size for the M10 on the optical viewfinder front, the Leica wins that one. Now, getting into a sort of boring but very important category, we're gonna go after battery life. So one of the things that Fujis are known for being kind of bad about are their batteries. What is good about them is they are very inexpensive and readily available, but because you're using more electronic viewfinders and things like that, the Leica battery just lasts a lot longer in my cases. While it is incredibly expensive, I have found that I can make it most of the way through a wedding day on one battery with the Leica, usually changing towards the end when dancing's starting, and for elopements and things like that, I usually can get away with just having one battery. So for battery life, the Leica takes that category. So in terms of a hybrid camera, being able to use it both as a photo and video camera, this is another one where the Fujifilm wins by default, but also if it was put against a bunch of other cameras, it would still do really well. If you want to do some run and gun video stuff, maybe you're doing like a travel vlog or even just like a street photography thing, you want to get a couple establishing shots and then go through do your street photography or whatever it might be, the X-Pro3 actually puts out really good video specs. So not only does it just win by default, but it's actually a good video camera in its own right in a pinch. I wouldn't buy it just to shoot video. That would be silly. There are plenty of other less expensive options for that. But the nice thing is within the same Fujifilm system, there are great options like the X-T4 or even the XS10. So Fujifilm definitely wins in the video category. Another spot where the Fujifilm excels is just the built-in in-camera JPEGs. The film simulations that you get out of this look great. I would definitely not want to ever shoot to the Leica just on JPEG. It's just too contrasty. There's a lot of other issues that I don't really like about it. So if you wanted to just kind of fire out some stuff for social media really quick, the Fujifilm definitely is going to give you much better JPEGs straight out of camera. And it's definitely something that the Fujifilm is known for. That being said, in terms of actual raw files, I actually do prefer the Leica in that regard. There's just more depth and I feel like there's better color and stuff like that. This is going to be highly subjective, obviously, but personally, I do find the Leica is a little bit easier to edit and it just fits my style a little bit better. Colors are a little bit more vibrant. They seem not to break down in Lightroom as quickly as well. So in the terms of raw photos, I'm going to give that to the Leica M10. Now, another category where the Fujifilm is just going to win outright is autofocus. And for a flagship camera, it still does a great job. It's not, I don't find the Fujifilm to be as good as some of the Canon or Sony stuff, but it's definitely no slouch. The face and eye tracking does really well. I've done plenty of tests of my son running at me and me tracking things really quickly, and it does a great job. For a wedding photography camera or a street photography camera, I definitely would say it is more than enough. If you're shooting sports or something, maybe it wouldn't be the best, but for most normal use cases that aren't incredibly fast action, the Fujifilm X-Pro3 is going to do a great job for that. And now as we move from autofocus to manual focus, clearly the Leica is going to be the winner in that regard. The rangefinder is just the easiest way to manually focus anything. I don't care if you tell me that focus peaking or other magnification, whatever it is, I find that the rangefinder, just lining the two things up in the rangefinder patch, for me has been by far the easiest way to manually focus any camera with good accuracy and consistency. So while there are good tools for the Fujifilm, the Leica just takes the cake. Plus, a lot of the Fujifilm lenses are focused by wire, which is something that is just not a good experience at all. And so for a lot of reasons, including the lenses and the rangefinder system, which I tend to prefer, the Leica wins in that regard for sure. Now, one of the things that people are always going to bring up, and it's going to just be a massive discrepancy between the two, and probably the thing that's going to hold people back from using one over the other is going to be cost. Now, the Fujifilm, while not cheap, is definitely much more inexpensive compared to the Leica system. You can buy multiple Fujifilm bodies, multiple high-end lenses, all that kind of stuff for the price of just one camera and one lens from the Leica. You're basically paying, I don't even know what the thing would be, but significantly more money for less stuff on the Leica system. The cost difference is just astronomical. And it's basically cost prohibitive for the vast majority of people to buy a Leica camera. Myself personally, I usually wait 3 or so years between when something's announced from Leica until I can actually afford, even as a professional working photographer, to justify buying one. So right off the bat, and very, very clearly, the Fujifilm wins in that category. But I will add a caveat saying that the Leica stuff, while it does get that initial price drop from kind of like the drive it off the lot thing, the lenses and the cameras hold their value very, very, very well. Even the Leica M240s and the Leica M9s and stuff are still selling for mid-2000s to $3,000. And the lenses from the early 2000s, before Fujifilm was even making stuff, are still selling for thousands and thousands of dollars. So for a cost, across a long period of time, I think it's easy to sort of justify that as an investment in something that you're going to use for a long, long time, and it's going to hold its value really well as well. And the final category that I'm going to put in here is just the overall shooting experience. Now, the Fujifilm is definitely an amazing camera, and in comparison to most other mirrorless cameras, a Sony, a Canon, most just other typical cameras that most people are using, the shooting experience of this is great. I do like the flip screen here covering things up, getting you to kind of focus just on the photography. The offset viewfinder is great. Being able to kind of toggle between the electronic viewfinder and the optical viewfinder is a great experience. Being able to easily flip through, having lots of custom functions and dials. Honestly, the shooting experience out of the X-Pro3 is very, very good, and definitely head and shoulders above many other cameras out there. But I will say the reason why people use Leica cameras is for the shooting experience. And again, it might not be, and definitely isn't for everyone. There are going to be probably a majority of people that prefer the X-Pro3 or the Fujifilm experience of photography, because shooting with a rangefinder just isn't for everyone. I personally love using these cameras. I love, and when I see this camera on my shelf, it makes me want to pick it up and use it. And then just the connection of me, it's almost like when you make your own meal, it just tastes better because you had to do the work to do it. If you hike to the top and you see something, it's worth it because you had to work to do it. It almost feels, and this is going to be stupid, I'm going to get comments, why would you spend more money to have a more difficult shooting experience? But there's just something about doing that that makes me feel a deeper connection to the images that I'm making and makes me focus more on the stuff that I'm doing while I'm using it. So the overall shooting experience with the Leica definitely is going to take the cake on this one. And honestly is the reason for someone like me that I feel like I can justify the price. Because honestly, just using the camera and being inspired by the gear I use is sort of invaluable as someone that wants to continue to do photography for a long time. So hopefully this is helpful. I know that it was kind of a weird, different way of me doing videos. So if you like this kind of video breakdown, this versus series, please let me know in the comments below. And if you disagree with me, which I'm sure there are going to be plenty of disagreements on many of these fronts, feel free to let me know your thoughts down below. I'd love to kind of dialogue about this stuff. If you're someone that's used a Leica, but maybe not a Fujifilm, or used a Fujifilm, but maybe not a Leica, feel free to drop questions below. I've used both fairly extensively and would like to help out. And I'm sure other people would love to come to the defense of one side or the other for you as well. And if you liked this video and you made it to the end, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to this channel. Those things definitely help push the videos out to more people and helps me to do more videos like this. So thanks again, and I will see you on the next one.